Like, why do people reach for that thing or that next person or that next, like everyone's dreaming of the next vacation or the next party or the next date? It's because it feels so hard to just be with yourself.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, today we have a very special guest. She's an anxiety coach and a writer, according to her Instagram. She's one of the few people where I can honestly say, like, where I looked at her social media page and I said, you're posting the stuff not for followers, like you genuinely want to spread a positive message. Liana Gergely, we're actually really happy to have you. We've been working on this for a while.
Well, thank you so much. I am so happy to be here, and I think what you guys are doing is so cool. So any way that I can support it and talk a little bit about what I do is such an exciting opportunity. Thanks for the opportunity.
No, of course, of course. I guess the best way to, before we even get started, like, just kind of tell us what you do, because I'm sure people hear that and they're like, what really is that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, first and foremost, just saying to anyone out there who felt like completely stuck or confused about their career right before the pandemic or in the pandemic, I made a huge career pivot in the last year. I was in media and marketing before, which I loved, but I've always been passionate about mental health and spirituality and wellness, and felt like it was time to turn this side hustle hobby into actually something concrete. And so about 6 months into COVID, I decided to launch a spiritual coaching business, kind of inspired, honestly, by not knowing what I wanted to do next. I didn't know if I wanted to maybe go to school to be a therapist and work with people one-on-one. I didn't know if I wanted to be a thought leader or motivational speaker, but I knew that like these topics were not being talked about enough, and that every time I came across a podcast or a video series like this, or a talk or a book that felt like it was in like inside my own head, that feeling felt so good, and I wanted to create more of that. So over the last 8 months or so, I've been building a coaching business. I focus mainly on women in their 20s and 30s who struggle with perfectionism and anxiety. So kind of like that nagging self-talk that's always criticizing you, or the intense fear of wondering what people think and if you're missing out, and all the kind of anxiety and low self-esteem and obsession and overthinking that comes with it. So I work with many women one-on-one. I'm launching my first group program in the next 2 months, which is really exciting, so that I can help more people. I'm working on writing a book right now, launching a newsletter. So it's kind of a mishmash of things, but I just don't want people to feel alone, and I want to share some of the spiritual tools that I've gained over the last 15 years that I've been working on this stuff. So hopefully it doesn't take other people 15 years to find some of the relief that I did.
I love that. And like, especially during COVID, I feel it's such a time where people do feel alone. Like, we're restricted to our own households, and a lot of people, there's not as many social gatherings and all this stuff. So it's definitely a time where people, you really learn how to communicate right now, because so often we have the people around us, but now it's about you personally reaching out and being able to talk about that difficult stuff. I think a lot of my friends, I'm not really able to talk about like how I feel a lot, just because they may not feel comfortable necessarily even talking about that, let alone giving advice.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you pick and choose. I feel like with OE, a reason we've been able to start this is just because we're both very open with how we feel, or at least OE's become more open. He used to he used to
Yeah,
not really,
I was a closed book completely, and I went to this emotional intelligence training, and that honestly like opened up the doors and the space to speak about your emotions. I think it's such a like difficult topic. I like my uncle's like sitting right there, like actually, and I would refuse to talk about like anything like where like when it came to like girls, just so many things I was so hesitant to speak about, and having the tools to open up about it is insane. And it's something that's not taught like in education, and when you understand your feelings and who you are as a person more, because that's like there's no end point, it's a journey, and it's like continuing, and I'm getting way better at opening up. Like I just
would you
I
say
open up to the
perception, by the way. Like I feel like people do kind of think there's an endpoint when really it's like, I've mastered this. Oh, I'm good now. I can forget about all this mental health and stuff. But like, no, it's continuous, and you're gonna find moments where you're lower than others, and learning all these different mechanisms to cope. I feel it's so valuable.
Mhm.
I was watching one of your videos before, and it was like about having your friends, needing like your friends' approval, and like needing that, like, that, yeah, you're doing great, like, yeah, that's okay, needing that reassurance. And how would you say have you had any specific difficulties that led you to select this way of working, or have you had to overcome anything?
Mhm. Well, first of all, if anyone has found the endpoint, please send it my way, because I have not found it. And I think one thing that I really, really try to focus on with all my content, which is really hard at times because it's vulnerable, and
Yeah.
people I'm dating go on, read my Instagram, and potential jobs I'm applying for and things like that, is that I still go through this stuff on a daily basis. I think oftentimes people want to go to someone for like a fix, and every time I've tried to get a quick fix, I've maybe felt a little relief, and then I've been back with the same issues as before. And so I really want to equip people with tools to help them navigate the difficult moments with more ease, which will therefore lead to fewer difficult moments. But it's not to get to some other destination. It's just to be more equipped within yourself with what comes up. So
Yeah.
really related to that. And yeah, I mean, I think there's so many things. I was just born a really sensitive child. I think I had a lot of really big feelings from a really young age. And one of the main kind of similarities with almost everyone that I work with, and I don't think it's a coincidence, is family dysfunction of some level. In my family, I'm a product of divorce. There's also a lot of addiction in my family, and that really does affect the whole family system and how people, Owie, to your point, how people learn to communicate, which feelings they share, which feelings they don't share. It also really affects people's images and views of themselves. So if you weren't given a lot of positive reinforcement, for example, you, as a survival mechanism, learn to develop this thing that seeks it outside of yourself. And then it's harder to feel that kind of internal sense of validation or self-esteem. So I feel like those kind of laid the groundwork. And when I was in high school, I'm really fortunate that I started going to therapy very, very young. And I'm really open about that because I truly don't think there should be any shame about going to therapy or seeking help or talking. Um, and high school was a really hard time for me. That's kind of when my anxiety disorder really flared up, and I started getting more professional help for that. That's also when I was introduced to spirituality for the first time and realized, like, oh, I need a shift of perception. I need to believe that there's something greater than like my own brain and my own anxiety. I need to learn to relate to myself in a nicer, more compassionate way. Um, so there's been a myriad of things, but I think it all kind of came down to like going through ordinary things made me feel ordinary difficult things, like a breakup or not getting a job I really wanted or not getting into my top choice college, brought up like such low self-esteem and such anxiety that I just remember thinking like there has to be other ways to just like respond to the ups and downs of life without feeling like I'm on this like emotional roller coaster all the time. And that's hopefully what I'm able to teach people.
What would you
So it's
say is like one of your biggest like tools that you use? Because I know you said you use tools.
hmm,
Oh my God, there's so many. I think the most transformational one is something I teach my clients called the gentle loving voice. And it's basically a way to, okay, so we hear voices in our heads all the time. I don't mean that in a crazy way. We don't even realize, but like in all of our thoughts, there are voices talking to us. They're telling us you did bad, you did good, you should have done that. They're all hanging out without you. That guy probably doesn't even remember you anymore. What's wrong with you that you're so upset about this breakup? You shouldn't be so stressed about work. Your boss is going to fire you, right? We hear these thoughts all the time. And most of them are made up. It's our imagination. But
Yes.
we've been doing it for so long that it's like a muscle. And most of those thoughts, if you struggle in the way that I struggle, where with perfectionism and then maybe an anxious attachment style and some codependency, most of those thoughts are like negative or critical in some way, or in some way they're telling you you're not going to be okay and it's not going to be okay. Um, and really similarly to how you have to go to the gym if you want to like build your bicep muscle and you have to do the same exercises every day. I learned that if I want to start developing a different voice in my head, like a kinder voice, a more supportive voice, like a voice that sounds like how I would actually talk to a friend, because I would not talk to a
Mm.
friend the way that I was talking to myself. I had to work it every day. Um, and I had to put as much effort into building that voice as I was into building the
Your
negative voice, which
biceps,
had
yeah.
been building for 20 years. So I teach my clients a lot of like self-talk techniques. We do it through journal writing and letter writing. And it's something that you kind of have to learn to like be your own friend through difficult moments so that that's the voice you
Yeah.
start to hear rather than like, why do you screw everything up? Or, like,
But let me ask you, because would you say, you said in high school you started going through like more difficult problems. Is that when you started to notice the negative voice? Or when did you really start, when did you start to notice it? And when would you say you actively started working on
yeah.
improving?
I mean, I think I had always had it. Like, I remember in middle school, just most people don't know they have the negative voice. They just don't feel good in their own skin. They can't really identify what it is, but like they feel maybe people don't like them or they're trying to fit in or they just don't feel confident when they look in the mirror. Like that's I think you experience before you can actually identify like, oh, it's my thoughts that are creating these feelings that are then creating this perception of myself. Like it took me a while and it takes most people a while to trace it back to the thought level. um, when I was in high school, I went through my first my first love, my first breakup, and it just completely shattered me. Like I truly felt I was going to die without this person, and I just had never. It was my first love. I was a junior in high school. I had no idea what those feelings were, and I think that's when I really realized like just what I'm hearing in my own head is not serving me. It's just like it's not helping me. It is hurting me. And I don't know how to change it, but I have to believe that I can be able to. And so that's really when I started to realize that like I was spending, yes, my boyfriend had dumped me, but I was spending 24 hours a day with myself, having these thoughts about myself and my worth and my value and my coolness and what people liked about me, what people didn't like about me, and how I was going to be alone forever, and all these thoughts. Like that's what I was hearing all day long. So I think that's when I realized, like, when you are like in bed and you can't get out of bed and nothing's wrong, and you're watching TV and you're eating ice cream and you're miserable, it's a lot easier to realize like nothing's going on except what I'm hearing in my own between my two ears. I don't know if that answered your question or made any sense, but
It, it's crazy because I relate to that, and especially obviously you're saying you went through it in high school. That's kind of what I've been going through since college started. I mean, as a freshman, just trying I felt like very alone freshman year, and it wasn't because I couldn't communicate with people and interact. I could, but it felt like these weren't my group of people that I really wanted to be with. Because I never considered joining a fraternity or anything because I didn't want to be put into something where I didn't feel like I had control. And that seemed like that situation. But at the same time, just freshman year, like having girls that you're interested in and all this stuff, and it being homesick and the weather being terrible, all of these things add up. And I didn't really know how to deal with it. But I'd say I journaled and I meditated and I used these different coping mechanisms. And honestly, even though at the time I wasn't seeing immediate results, like I can truly say now, like I'm in such a better place, like more confident about everything. Like even at Beverly, like Owie, I'm sure you can agree. Liana, you went to Beverly as well. Like all these people are we're in high school, but so many of these people are focused on materialistic goods like cars and money and all this stuff. And it's like it's hard to be around people like that when it's like you have like these other goals and you see yourself in a certain way.
Well, I will also just add one thing that, yes, I mean, I so relate to the like materialism. I also think that one of the biggest things I had to realize, and it sounds maybe, Adam, like what you kind of realized and reckoned with last year, is that like the happiness and the inner peace is, it's truly an inside job. I think the biggest issue is people thinking that the thing that's going to make them feel better is outside themselves. And yes, sometimes people think it is a car or a job or a house or like some material thing. But sometimes, I mean, when I was laying in my bed for 3 days and I couldn't get out of bed because I was so heartbroken, I was just like, as long as this guy gets back together with me, I will be fine. That's all I need. And
Yeah.
that's called codependency. That's completely depending on something outside of yourself to feel a sense of okayness. Not that we're not dependent beings. I depend on food and family and friends and fun and exercise and all these other things for my well-being. But I do them and I gravitate towards them because they make me feel good, not because I feel like I have no worth or sense of like security unless I have them. And so I think that that's the biggest things, like the cool group of friends, the job offer, the whatever it may be that like you're currently thinking, if I could just get that, if I could just get that guy to notice me, if I could just get my grade, like I'll be happier. You'll find that like it's kind of like whack-a-mole. You'll get that thing and then you still won't be happy unless you kind of solve that like feeling of deficiency inside.
It's always the next thing, then the next thing, then the next thing. That's why like you can never get enough until like you're enough inside. I truly believe in that.
No, I do too. And yeah, and people, I mean, I still struggle with this. Like even during COVID, some days I was like, oh, well, once COVID's over, I'll just feel so much less depressed, you know? And of course, there's some real truth to that. I mean, this is just a really devastating time for a lot of people, but it's like a mindfulness and spirituality. And I think a lot of my work in Buddhism is like the future moment is made up by like all the present moments. So like, if I can't get this moment right, like what is telling me that when I get that thing, I'm going to be like this happy, different person? But I mean, yeah, I mean, that's what it really means to be present, is like not only being present, but like, can the present be enough for you as it is?
And I think it, yeah, that's something that I have problems like with doing. But meditation and Kundalini yoga that I've been doing, I actually just completed this 40-day Kriya, and it was insane. Like just pushing yourself every day. Like you do this like 60-degree like breath work, and the energy that it just creates like throughout your day is insane. The presence that I have like when I do tasks is so different. Before I would get drained, like my aunt like used to call me. I'd be like, I wouldn't want to pick up her phone because I'd be like, what does she want from me? And now I have this different energy that I'm carrying like with her, and it's just transitioning into so many different areas of my life, like that presence that you talk about.
Totally. Well, and you know, I know you were mentioning before how difficult it is to like feel your feelings and communicate your feelings, and I think a lot of that is because we spend a lot of time in our heads, or we spend a lot of time like doing stuff out there, working, going out, seeing friends, being busy, being on the phone, texting, social, and we're not actually in our bodies. And like that is actually something I think I'm really working on for the first time in the last couple of years. It's like, oh, the feelings are in my body. The like clarity that I'm seeking, or the answer that I'm seeking, or the thing I'm trying to figure it out, like that's not in my head. That's like in my body. So any practices, this is why like yoga, you know, was designed actually not even as a workout. It was truly designed as like a preparation to do sitting meditation, so that for an hour you could loosen your joints and like, you know, have mobility in your body, so that when you sat to meditate, A, you would be less stiff, but B, you could actually feel your body. So I mean, I just think the fact that like the Kundalini is so huge. And meditation is that. I mean, essentially you're sitting in your body trying to redirect your focus back from your mind. but I think we live in a really like
In your head,
overthinking culture. Yeah,
that's true.
totally.
I actually like remembered when I was doing the Kundalini today, I started crying and I didn't know why. I guess it's like emotions that I was like suppressing, and it just went out through my body, and I get tension in like a lot of my neck, and it all goes away like when I do the Kundalini, and I think that's
It's
just
awesome.
tension
When
from
you finished,
just like emotions.
was it during it?
Like I was doing this one exercise and I was just like full on just crying. It
You were
was
doing those
intense.
deep breaths and you just crying while you were doing it.
I swear to
Crazy.
God, yeah.
Sorry, Liana, I just wanted to ask you, so you're an anxiety coach. How does that differ from a therapist?
Yeah, no, great question.
Or is
So
it?
no, it's not a therapist. Coaching is a little bit different than therapy. And honestly, I didn't know this. I didn't get my first coach until like a year ago. A therapist is a trained professional who is really designed to help you unpack and understand why you are the way you are. So a lot of therapy is backwards looking, which has been transformational for me in my life, while also helping you with present day issues and giving you tools or understandings or new perspectives to kind of deal with them. I think, the whole modality of therapy, at least types of therapy that I've done, I can't speak for the whole industry, is that whatever's happening and coming up for you right now has some roots to either your childhood or your patterns or your belief systems, and they're really there to help you unpack it. A coach is more like a spiritual and emotional accountability buddy. So it's much more equal, I find. At least this is how I approach it with my clients. And it's much more action oriented and like forward looking than backwards looking. So I don't really, first of all, most of my clients go to therapy also. And I think coaching and complementing coaching with therapy is super helpful because we don't really go backwards. I'm not licensed to help you really psychoanalyze your parents and, different grief that you might have and things like that. But I can give you practical tools, journaling exercises, other exercises, different suggestions to help you through whatever struggle is in front of you and kind of get you that clarity into the next step that you're seeking, while also being more available than a therapist would. So a coach, usually you'll like have a session with them once a week, but then you can reach out to them via phone or email or text throughout the week. They're really like think about like a running
Yeah.
coach. Like they want to know that you're getting to the different miles, and if you're training for a marathon, they're checking in where you're at and what you've done and how they can support you and answer questions. So it's they work really well together, but they are different as well.
Okay. What would you say your
You
number
don't have
one
a
tip
preference?
is? What would you say your number one tip is, like when you're like coaching people? Like what's something that comes up like all the time, like in different people?
Yeah, how much resistance we have to our present experience. I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the like self-criticism that I was mentioning before. One of the most, I'll explain kind of this concept. One of the most helpful ideas I ever learned in Buddhism was this idea of the two arrows. So there's this story that Buddha tells about how being human on this planet is full of pain. I'm sure you've heard the expression. I think it's used in sports a lot. Pain is mandatory, suffering is optional. So like being a human, you are going to face loss and death and change and grief and aging, and no one escapes that reality. So the way the Buddha described it is like all of those things make up pain, which is like life kind of shooting with a bow and arrow, shooting an arrow into you. You're in pain, you just lost a lover, a parent died, you're going through big change at work, whatever it may be. But then the mind, which is the whole point of meditation, is to become less attached to this part of the mind, tends to add judgment or resistance to what you're going through. Judgment can look like why are you feeling that way? You're so lazy. You should get out of bed. You shouldn't be upset. You should be over this by now. Like you're just gonna wait. You're still anxious about this. Like we've been anxious about this 100 times. Like, what's wrong with you? And then resistance is like, oh my God, this is so uncomfortable. I need to get out of this feeling right now. I need to make it go away. I need that thing that's going to make it better. I need the person or the drink or the food, right? We try to like escape the feeling rather than just saying, oh, I'm really sad today. That's just where I'm at. Like, how can I get on my own team about it? And so what the Buddha says is that like when you start to judge yourself or resist your experience, thinking it should be different or you should be different or you're experiencing the wrong thing, that's like getting a second arrow shot into you. So not only do you have the first arrow, I mean, a great example, I think, is when someone's going through a breakup. I work with a lot of people around dating, which is why I'm using all these examples, but someone's going through a breakup and they're heartbroken, 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 heartbroken. And then 3 days later, they start to then obsess about all the things they did wrong in the relationship and what a mess up they are. And if they had only not said that thing, that's like your first arrow, you were heartbroken, you were dumped. That's so painful. And now you're going to start to judge yourself and criticize yourself and wonder what if and ruminate and replay the past and rehash the past. That's like shooting a second arrow while you're already down. And that's kind of the whole teaching of Buddhism is like you're not going to be able to avoid pain, but you can learn ways to suffer less, right? I can learn how to be heartbroken, and it's not a perfect process, and watch how my brain tries to like beat myself up about something that I did, or, obsess about how I'm going to be single for the rest of my life, or whatever worrying or self-blaming thing that it does. And then I'm like, oh my God, I'm already in pain. Like, why would I do that to myself? That's like double the pain when I'm
Suffering
already in
twice.
pain. Yeah.
Suffering 2 times.
I know that was a bit of a long-winded explanation, but I feel like that's kind of the biggest thing. I can't like take pain away from any of my clients, like I can't, or myself, like I can't remove heartbreak or loss or sickness or fear or any of those things. But like what I can help them learn and then help them walk away with is like different tools around different ways to respond to yourself and respond to those feelings so that like pain doesn't turn into suffering. I mean, one really interesting fact that I learned is that like on average, any feeling lasts in the body for 90 seconds. But then why we feel feelings for days and weeks and months and years is because we start thinking about the feeling and we start telling stories about the feeling. And then we start replaying the events that have to do with the feeling. And then 3 years later, we're still not over the thing that happened 3 years before. So it's like, how do you not add suffering to pain and just find a way to be more present with what you're experiencing so it can kind of move through you and you can, your life can keep growing.
It's interesting though, because I feel like with the pain, suffering with pain, you said, with the pain, I feel like that allows you to grow because you see how much it messes you up. And that's through the consequence, you're able to understand like, okay, well, I clearly can't get in this thought process again, or it's going to drive me crazy. If I go through this breakup, I have to be maybe a little less attached, or I have to, like, all these things flow through your mind. But I can 100% relate with like replaying it in your head over and over again. And I definitely realized that's why I've like held on to things for longer than I necessarily have to. But I wanted to say I want to talk about the Buddhism. You mentioned it briefly, but you also said resistance, and I feel like that ties into what we said earlier about like being in the moment. Because when we have that resistance, it's like, oh, like let's get out of here, or you rationalize it by saying, oh, I can't wait to go back to LA, or I can't wait to go to that place, and you don't really embrace in the moment. It's why do you think we have that? Like, why are we thinking that way?
Totally. I mean, I feel like it's pretty wired into our beings. First and foremost, like culturally, we live in like such a fast-paced, just like scroll the pain away culture. There's always a new movie, a new thing, a new gadget, a new restaurant, so like that's just getting out to the next thing is like how we're wired in society. I think it's really hard to feel uncomfortable, and it's really hard to sit with uncertainty. And usually when we're in pain, those are the two things that are happening. It's really uncomfortable and there's a lot of uncertainty. And there's change usually. And so I know that sounds like a trite answer, like it's just uncomfortable, but I think we're just like, similar to what you were saying about how we're not taught to communicate our feelings, like as part of education and as part of childhood. Like, I don't know. I don't think we're taught to, like, no, you can sit with, I know you're feeling a lot of big feelings right now, but you can sit with this. Like, they will pass, and
Yeah.
you are resilient enough to sit with this without like going to fix it in some way or escape it in some way or eat a Ben and Jerry's pint and, you know, to make it
About to
feel
say
better.
that. I was like, we're literally like taught like, oh, have an ice cream, you'll feel better. Or, oh,
Or like, stop crying, it's all okay. Like, think about any time you fell as a kid in the park or something. It's like, you're fine, and you are fine. But we're not really, as a society, wired to, we're not told that we're really allowed to feel pain, and that we are resilient enough to feel pain. And so then our brain comes up with ways to get us out of pain, or to distract us from pain, or to get us into our heads instead of feeling what's happening in our hearts and bodies, which ironically actually causes more suffering and is even more uncomfortable. And Adam, to your point, you know, most people have their biggest growth and learning from like, wow, all I did for 6 months was blame myself for XYZ. Like, maybe I didn't have to do that, you know? So it's kind of crazy. I feel like we end up causing more harm to ourselves, but we're just kind of doing what we were taught and what feels like the best thing we can do in the moment.
Because for me as like a guy, and like the toxic like school that I went, it wasn't, I wouldn't say, like my high school was all boys like boarding school. So that like causes toxic masculinity, because guys, when you're speaking about girls, it's like, oh, like I got this girl, like, oh, I had sex with this girl and I had sex with that girl. And you're not speaking about like the feelings that you guys shared and the connection that you guys like truly shared with that person. It's all about this like superficial surface level stuff. And only like now recently, like I realized it, like that's cool, and like those experiences shaped me, but I want to dive deeper because there's so much more like deeper, and it's opening up, like, and it's, I think it's being able to receive that. I wasn't able to receive like that affection, and I think being a guy is, it's looked down upon, like to show your feelings and like say like I love you and like all these things that you're feeling towards
That's
me.
why when you told me that you cried today, I was so happy to hear that, even though I know that that's painful, because I truly think the world would be better if more men cried. I actually really do. I mean, I think more people should feel their feelings, but I agree with you. I think there's, you know, and I didn't mention that before, there are also a lot of gender norms that come into play about like what feelings are acceptable and when. And people also have a lot of ideas about like how long you're allowed to be upset about something, like how many times, like, you know, has, you know, God forbid someone passed away, like there's like, as if there's this timeline on grief, and then if 3 weeks later you still kind of feel like disheveled or distraught, you feel like something's wrong with you. But like, but why? Like, who told you that? Where did we get this message that like feelings are always linear and they take this many days? And so if you broke up on a Monday, by Wednesday you should be feeling 20% better, and then by Thursday you should be feeling 50% better. By Saturday you should be totally ready to go. And like, if anything else is wrong, that's like some, you know, it's like not at all. Like, it's truly more like ups and downs, and like, you know, a sine wave. Like, I have pain about breakups come up months later after I've already been feeling fine. It's just like the healing process is not linear and the feeling process is not linear, but we're kind of like in a, it's been 3 days, like time to get yourself together. And like the emotions just don't follow that like man-made timeline.
Yeah, I think it's also like a balance, because wouldn't you say it does get too much if you sit in that for too long? Um, and like I think humans, like, isn't it, you said it's like wirely, subconsciously just ingrained in us to like look to the next thing, because that's how we're surviving, like each day. Like food, we need to get food, and it's because food is so accessible to us in America. We don't, like, those primal like needs are like all met. So we look at these like materialistic things, as Adam was saying, and we resort to that stuff.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think there's a difference between like showing up for your life and like seeking that shiny thing. You know, I mean, my clients are always telling me that they're upset about a guy who kind of ghosted them or rejected them. And they're like, but I met this other guy and I'm now talking to him and now I'm so excited about that. And I can tell that like they just kind of like shifted to that so that they could distract themselves from their pain they were feeling.
Mm,
Like, I'm not telling them stay at home and cry. I'm saying go to work, have your day, see your friends, exercise. It's just like looking, I guess, at what the motivation or the intention is. Like, are you running away from something or are you taking care of yourself? Being in your life and doing things that feel good for you, like eating nutritious foods or working out or like relaxing or having fun with friends, like that's self-care. And you know, usually we know when we're like, if the intention is kind of to like numb a feeling or like create dramas to distract us from another thing. So it's just about learning to check in with yourself, being like, what am I really doing this for?
So what's funny, I was gonna play devil's advocate to that situation you just said about like the girl being in a relationship with a guy, breaking up and then being with another guy. Do you attribute, so you think it's because she's hopped to the next guy, she's doing it because he's shown her attention, but or because she wants to get over the previous guy, but maybe she's also doing it because she's never been shown that much attention before, and maybe the previous guy wasn't even that good of a fit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know. I just feel like there's so many different variables, and
A
we have.
100%. And that's why it's like each person has to check in with themselves to know what is really going on. I think one thing that I'm really passionate about teaching around is like knowing how to be alone. And I think that a majority of my problems before I really started working on myself in this way was actually an inability to be alone with myself without, because that's another thing. Like, why do people reach for that thing or that next person or that next, like everyone's dreaming of the next vacation or the next party or the next date? It's because it feels so hard to just be with yourself. So I'm not saying that everybody who moves on quickly is like escaping something, but you know, I think it's valuable for every person to have a moment and like really know how to be with themselves,
Yeah.
and know why they're running towards certain things. But you know what, like each person is really different and each person's psyche operates in a really different way, and there's no like, I think that's how, you know, coaching is a little different. There's no like theory to coaching. It's just like me working with you to help you get as clear as possible on what you're feeling, wanting, and needing so that you can act in alignment with that and feel your most confident. I don't have any other agenda other than that except to help you get clear on that.
It's crazy. I feel like everyone has like with girls, like with anyone, it's like you have to learn their language almost. Like everyone has their different language, but it's also about learning your own language, because I feel like we're not really that aware of it at times. But I wanted to say, so you talked about being able to like being okay with being by yourself. So talk about, you went to a Buddhist monastery in India, and that's practically what the goal was of it. You were by yourself for
Mhm.
3 months, was it?
Yeah, no, it was my semester abroad in college. I was in college in New York. I went to Barnard, and I had already kind of been into spirituality, but I didn't have a meditation practice. And I really wanted to do something unconventional for my study abroad. Um, and so I went to the dean's office and she's like, well, there's this awesome program in India where you go and live in a Buddhist monastery, like monks and nuns, and you know, you'll take classes, but you'll learn formally how to meditate. And I was like, wow, that seems amazing. My mom had like a heart attack when I told her. But yes, and she still is like, it brings up so much anxiety for her just thinking about that time. But yes, it was an amazing program. There were 36 of us, 36 college kids living in a Buddhist monastery in Northeast India in this town called Bodh Gaya, which if you know anything about Buddhism, you know that the Buddha was enlightened under a tree. That's why you always see pictures of him under a tree. That tree was in the town that I lived in. So it's like the center of enlightenment for Buddhism, kind of like Jerusalem for Jews, or, Mecca in the Islam tradition. So it was a really holy place, and it was about learning how to really be with yourself without those distractions. I recently wrote a piece for the Huffington Post about this because it was really interesting. Like, actually, early quarantine kind of reminded me a lot of this, except that, like, not only did I not have social plans and parties and all this stuff, like, we had no phone, no TV, no computer, no Instagram, no social media. My iPod broke on the flight to India, so I didn't even have music, which was devastating for me because I listen to music constantly. We also were really just kind of taught to live with minimalism. So they gave us like each a plate, a fork, a spoon, a knife, and a cup. And after every meal, you had to go and wash it, take it back to your room, and then bring it back to the next meal. And like, if you lost one of your pieces of cutlery, like, you had to go into town to get it. Like, it was really about teaching you how to live without all the material stuff. And we meditated for 2-3 hours every day. We had breakfast in silence, which sounds easy, but my thoughts are like the most anxious and spinning in the mornings. To sit there during breakfast, I was like dying. But yes, it was a really hard experience for me. Similar to what you were saying before, Adam, I suffered a lot because I really saw how much what was happening in my head. Like, literally nothing was happening. I was like in this beautiful monastery with flowers everywhere, like meditating, like nothing's wrong. I was so anxious and uncomfortable and upset. And that's really when I realized, like, it's not happening out there. Like, I'm literally like in a flower garden meditating. Nothing is wrong.
Literally,
Why do I feel so sad, so upset, or so worried about something that's happening 3 months from now? So it really showed me my brain, for better or worse.
No, honestly, I feel like it's like having the withdrawal symptoms of not having like your phone or your music or anything, and it's like just being focused on yourself, and it's like, oh my God, it's like, I'm not getting this dopamine from the text I just sent to this guy. Like, what's happened? Like, all this different.
Yeah, you're getting like no dopamine. Which, what's interesting is then you realize that your brain is actually trying to create dopamine all the time, like trying to worry about things, trying to, like, I wonder what they're doing. I wonder, like, that's also something I saw. I was like, why are we creating these like problems that don't exist?
These
Or like every
scenarios.
time, well, every
These
time
random
every time
scenarios.
every time you worry about something, your body's actually experiencing dopamine every time, because it's an adrenaline rush, and your body thinks that like something exciting is happening, but you've just made up like this whole worry in your mind, or like, so it was just really interesting. Like, oh wow, without the like stimulation and excitement, without the distraction. Another thing I forgot to mention is that, which I guess kind of relates to my coaching a little, is that we had to follow the 5 Buddhist precepts, which are a little bit like the 10 commandments in Judaism. Like, I'm trying to remember exactly what they were. Like, thou shalt not kill, which was not too hard to follow. But we were vegetarian the whole time. So I guess we did keep that. No stealing, no lying, no intoxicants of any kind. So you also take 36 college kids and you remove like all alcohol of any form. It's like people use that usually like to socialize or to feel better about themselves. And then the last one, which some people broke, but I did not, was like, we weren't allowed to have any romantic interactions of any kind with anyone. So like, again, you take 36 college kids and you tell them they can't hook up or flirt or really, or do anything. And it was because they really wanted you to see, like, who am I without all these things that I'm usually doing to like try to feel good, so it was quite a unique experiment.
Were there any temptation?
Yeah.
I had like one crush on one guy. He's become like one of my really good friends. I never acted on it though, and I'm very proud. Some people broke all of them. Maybe not the killing one, but I think that was really interesting for them to see too. Like, oh wow, why do I feel like I have to go find weed right now? Like, what is that in me that, like, I'm in northern India and that feels like a priority this minute? So I think it illuminated some things for a lot of people.
I had a similar, like, minute experience 6 hours this men's like meditation like retreat, and I'm just curious to like when I was doing that, same things were coming up. I was why is everything coming up? Why do I feel like I have to escape my body and just like run away and like do something rather than being inside? And how did you feel like coming back home like after those like 3 months? Were you more like present? Like how was that?
Yeah, I mean, I thought, and I was embarrassed about this for a long time because I had such high expectations of this trip. Like I thought I was just going to come back like so peaceful, so centered, much thinner because I would have been eating like chickpeas for 3 months, like all these great things. It was a really, really rough 3 months for me. I had like my anxiety really hit a high point. I really struggled with sleeping when I was there. The culture shock was really hard. It's very hard to be a white woman living in India, just given like the way the culture is there. So it took me a little bit of an adjustment. I didn't come back my happiest self. And another interesting thing, I think part of like the issue with society is that there's these expectations about what certain things are supposed to feel like. Like I remember when I got back to campus for spring semester, everyone was like, "Oh my God, how was India? Was it amazing? Did you have so much fun?" And like, first of all, no one who does any type of spiritual work would think that going to live in a Buddhist monastery for 3 months is like, oh my God, so much fun. But it also like, there was just this assumption that it had to be amazing. Like if someone asks you that, what are you supposed to say? Like, oh no, it was actually so hard and I cried every day. Like, so I think that that's something that I also just keep in mind with like my friends and family is like, not putting on them what I think the feeling or the experience should have been. Like, it's like asking someone like, was your birthday amazing? Some people get sad on their birthdays. Like that's acceptable. That's like allowed. But we just like live in this culture of like certain things are supposed to be happy things and certain things are supposed to be sad things. And we even have those like, I mean, I judged myself for a long time that I didn't have the most amazing the most amazing study abroad experience. But then over time, have realized like it was exactly what I was supposed to go through to like get me where I am now and to help me learn the things that I learned.
Such a good point. I feel like so many people project how they feel onto like your experiences. So it's like even with college, they'll be like, so how crazy was your college or something? And if you didn't have like the craziest time ever, you almost feel like it was a failure. When in reality, you might have learned so many life lessons, especially in my experience. I felt like I've learned so much stuff that I would have never learned if I had not been in college. So there's give and takes, and I guess like in your head you have to know, like you have to be confident in the fact that I grew from this and I had fun, and whatever anyone else says, like
and that's the like giving yourself approval and validation for your own experience. Like I went through what I was supposed to go through for myself. No one else needs to see that or get it, which is a lot easier said than done. And I think that comes with time a little bit and like age and maturity, but also just like no one needs to tell me that what I'm experiencing or have experienced is okay. I need to tell myself that. And that's, I mean, I'm still working on that every day. It's not easy for sure.
I completely like relate and agree to that. Even like when it comes to, I'm sure you got like a lot of calls on like goal setting and like that kind of thing, but I'm about to post this video of like me posting my goals, and it's scary. I'm gonna post it on YouTube, and I'm scared to do it because I'm gonna be vulnerable and open like with everything that I'm saying. And I think people fear that because they're scared to fail, and I won't lie, like I have a little bit of like hesitant because I'm like, oh, they're gonna know like if I fail, everyone's gonna judge me. But the truth is, like whether I post it or not, I just have to like sit with myself every day. And as you're saying, like no one's really gonna know like the work that it took.
And my question for you as a coach would be, how are you judging you? And how are you measuring your success or failure in like black and white terms? So one of the things that I have my clients do is rather than writing a list of like things they did great or things they did bad, I have them make a list every day of like, what am I getting to practice? Because every day you're getting to practice something. And it may not be towards your goal, like on a quantitative level, or like, I got this many followers, or like I got this grade on I got this score on my LSAT. Like it might not be like a concrete thing like that, but it's like, oh, I'm getting to practice not taking things personally. I'm getting to practice being vulnerable. I'm getting to practice sharing more honestly about myself. I'm getting to practice like trusting my gut around decisions. And it's like, if you look at your progress through that lens versus like, well, you failed here, or like you missed the mark. That's like so black and white. And it's so, I think that's like a perception shift that is really helpful to people, because it's like, oh, I'm on my way. It just doesn't look like a yes or a no or a good or a bad,
Yeah, definitely. I'm getting so much better at doing that, like not judging myself and like with other people and just other people's standards. And but again, like I'm finding that like balance of like creating timelines, because that creates that urgency, and I want to achieve great things. And that's just something that I have like in me, like this fire that I have in me. And yeah, it's just something like I want
And
to
by the
do.
way, I will say to you, most of the things that make us crazy are at their core actually really big assets about our personalities. Like there's nothing wrong with you having that sense of determination and passion and perseverance. Like that's amazing. I think that then that's why the question of intention is so important, is that when you're using that against yourself is like to make yourself feel badly about yourself, that's really different than using that to further yourself. So it's like also remembering like even things like, I mean, I'll give you an example. I'm a big overthinker and I overthink things and I overanalyze things. It causes me a lot of suffering. It's also a really big asset because I'm great at problem solving at work, and I'm really empathetic to people's feelings because I think through so just remembering that even the things that cause you suffering, they're assets. It's just like when they get out of balance, they kind of hurt us, but like in and of itself, it's like it's such good parts of our personality.
Yeah. What do you think your biggest like asset is, just in general, like that, where you're judging
Especially,
yourself, or just
yeah, like what would you feel like you've gained the most from this whole experience, this whole journey of yours? Probably
I
so
feel
many
like I
things
know
going through your head right now.
it's a very hard question, and I'm a perfectionist, so I like to answer it perfectly. What have I gained the most? I feel like I really know I know the feeling when I most authentically feel like Liana, like when I most feel like myself at my core, like I truly have known what that feeling is like.
Mm.
And every day it's a challenge to get there, to get back there, to not prioritize the external goals or the timelines or what my mom thinks or what my friend thinks or what society thinks I should achieve by age 30 or 30 whatever, like and to just know like when do I feel most comfortable and content in my skin. But I feel like that's the biggest thing that I've been given in this process, is like I really have experienced that. And it's such a great reference point because I know when I don't feel that way. I know when I'm out of alignment with who I am or my values, or I'm striving for something, or I'm trying to get someone to do something that I want them to do, or and so I think like you get to know yourself, and then it's so much more helpful to get back there because you can really feel what it feels like. I mean, I'm sure you guys know like what it feels like when you're just like not being true to yourself. It's a really distinct feeling, and you can't always fix it right away, but just the awareness has been such a gift.
yes, I can relate to that. You know this like feeling of, even if I accomplished something and it wasn't true to like my morals and like what I believe in, I just feel even worse than accomplishing that goal. and like just
Totally.
cheating myself.
No, and how many times, I mean, back to the dating thing, like how many times does something seem like a great idea in the moment, and then the next day or a couple days later, you're just like, I don't
Oh,
feel
God.
great about that.
Liana,
So
I
many
want your
people.
advice on this. I really
Okay.
want your advice on this. So the other day, or no, it was like a week ago, I was just like, you know what? Like I saw my friend do this, and I was like, you know what? Fuck it. Like why not? I'm gonna try this. So I added this random like this girl on Instagram who I didn't even know, but she went to my school, and she added me back, and I'm like, you know what? It's 2021. Like this is what people do. So I went into her DMs and I messaged her, and I just said something so stupid. And Liana, as soon as I sent that message, I was just
Do you
like,
want to tell us all what you said, or are we keeping it private?
Yeah,
No,
I'm
I'm just,
I'm
we're
I'm curious.
gonna have to keep that for another time.
oh, fine, fine.
Like the second I said it, I literally looked in the mirror and I was like, what am I doing? Like honestly, what am I doing? Like what do I expect out of this? Like am I trying to be cool? Like
Did your
honestly, I was
did your
just like,
friend
okay,
make you send it?
that's not happening again.
Like you
Say
kind of
that
froze
again,
for
you
a
cut
little bit.
out.
Did your friend
Oh,
make you like say it, like send that, or was it that just you who like came up with the message?
no, he didn't even make me see it. He sent it, and it like he was succeeding, and I was like, well, you know what? I want to be this guy right now, so I'm gonna do this. It's just like I've been working too hard the past year, like on my own journey. I've been through like too much like relationship crap to just like slowly like fall back to this. You know, like I'm through journaling. I've said it already. I sound like a broken record, but honestly, through journaling and meditation, like you almost hear yourself and you see what you're doing. And I've been working so hard to just improve and become a better self. And whether that's like cutting some people off or like I'm making all the necessary moves, and I'm gonna continue to do that. But it's holding myself accountable. Look, I put that,
Yeah,
I said it
but
right on everyone's.
and most importantly, because I just did something a month ago that I knew going into this romantic situation, I had a gut feeling. I was like, do not go to this person's house. Just do not go. This is not going to end well. And I did it anyways, even though I meditate every day and I know all these things. And you know what? The biggest thing that made the difference in me being able to learn from it was not beating myself up as if I had like, oh, I fell backwards. Like, you know, like all the progress is gone now, or like I'm so dumb, like I knew better, you know, like normally I really beat myself up and I was like, okay, I did this thing. Like, what would you say to a friend? Like, you wouldn't call a friend stupid, probably. You would say, like, there was some impulse in that moment. You sent X, Y, and Z. A good friend might ask you, like, what do you think was behind that? And then, like, tell you, like, you know what? You're human. And beating yourself up's not going to change it. It's in the past. It's not going to unsend the message. So, what can you learn? How can you be nice to yourself? And how can you move forward? And I feel like that's the
Yeah.
best thing you can do, because I don't even like the word like slipping, or like, because it's just an experiment and everything seems good in the moment until we do it. And then we check in with ourselves, and then maybe you won't do that again. And
No,
maybe I won't do that again. And now I know, you know?
yeah. So the person I sent that to, it was a little experiment. All right, like nothing.
But isn't that a little less stressful of a way to think about yourself than like either like you messed it up with this person, now they have XYZ thoughts about you and now you're just thinking about what they think, or feeling like you should know better, you're working on yourself. Why would you do that? Like people hate feeling like they've like taken steps backwards or gotten worse or something. It's just like that doesn't help you. So yeah, it was an experiment. It didn't feel good. You're learning, you're paying attention, and maybe you'll do something different next time. And just like having that more detached attitudes with yourself, I think just makes life like less high stakes.
It's true, and in the yeah, and that's such a good point, because in the moment we often feel like it's everything, but really,
Totally.
if you can have that attitude consistently, where it's like, you know, like we live once, so, like, you know, just like be yourself and just like have
Well,
fun.
and that there's truly no other way to learn how to live except to live. Like there's no guidebook, there's no practice round or rehearse. Like
Yeah.
this is it. You make the
Every
choice,
person's
you see how, yeah, you make the choice, you see how the choice feels. You either make the choice again or you make a different choice. It's like, and not to say that things don't have consequences, because they do, and you learn from those also, but I mean, I'm saying this right now, I'm feeling centered and calm. Like, you know, the morning after I did this thing, I was like, felt so upset at myself. So, you know, it's easier said than done. But, you know, it's just trying to remember like everything that's happening is for my growth. It was a necessary thing I had to go through. I may not know why now, but like, you're going to learn something from it. I'm going to learn something from it. That's why these things happen.
Yeah.
Hopefully you don't send any DMs.
Maybe let's keep you off of Instagram for a
Yeah,
little.
I might get for a bit after that. Liana, you've been great. I think we've been going for an hour or so now, but I hope people have learned something from this, man.
Do you both feel calmer after our session today? I hope so.
I do. I
Good.
really do.
Good.
Yeah.
Well,
And
thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be on this. I think it's so awesome that you guys are doing this and just like bringing in different perspectives on so many topics. Yeah, I really, really appreciate the chance to be on this episode of your show.
thank you,
Yeah.
Liana. Thank you so much. Do you want to promote your Instagram to all of the followers we have on this? I'm sure
Oh
you'll.
my God. Well, my name is kind of hard, is not very pronounceable, but you can find me on Instagram at Liana Gergely. I post a bunch of videos and content and info about upcoming courses, all related to pretty much everything we talked about today: dating, relationships, anxiety, insecurities, low self-esteem. And I would love to hear from you and hear what you're going through and connect on there.
Yeah. Thank you,
so
Liana, for being on. Yeah, we really appreciate it. Like once again, and yeah, see you soon.
See you
Yeah.
soon. Thank you so much.
Yeah.